So welcome everyone for this other installment of the How It Works Power webinar series, where we'll pull the curtain on how the insurance industry works. Today we will talk about earth, wind, fire, not the band, because we're going to add water to it. These are the four natural elements that none of us are really 100% immune against when it comes to property damage. So today we will explore some maybe unusual or not so much talked about causes of loss that are related to these four elements. Today's power webinar, again, will be 20 minutes long, and we will discuss the specificities of the coverage with the broker that fix things, Steve Roderick. All right. And also we will talk about the application of such losses and cause of losses with the broker with a property management background, Rutman. All right, welcome to the both of you. So let's dig together into the first subject. Let's talk about earth. So sinkholes. Sinkholes are not necessarily something that we think about on an everyday basis. They're described as basically a hole in the ground that is caused either by some sort of collapse of the surface layer. It can happen naturally, or it can be man-made, caused by human activities. So we will focus on the man-made causes of the sinkhole, and let's talk to Ross. How can the sinkhole affect a community association?
All right, well, you're right on the money. They're typically referred to as a collapse, and sometimes the collapse is due to an alteration of water runoff, or it could be due to leaky water mains or sewer pipes, and they could happen anywhere, an urban area, you name it.
Now, the sinkholes, when you think about those collapse, they can swallow buildings or parts of buildings. Is there any coverage for that, Steve?
Oh, in most cases, homeowners insurance doesn't cover sinkholes. Your homeowner insurance policy only covers physical structure of your house. Same with property coverages for condominiums and co-ops, HOAs. So like earthquakes, sinkholes are a form of earth movement, which is usually not a covered peril, unfortunately.
So is there any way we can get that type of coverage if we know that we suspect we might be in an area is at risk?
Sure. Sinkhole insurance it's a special insurance policy that covers your home and your personal belongings from sinkhole damage. They're related in earthquake in terms of insurance coverage. So sinkhole coverage includes the cost to repair your home's foundation and to stabilize the land beneath it. In order to use your sinkhole coverage, you must be able to prove, though, that your home has already sustained structural damage from that sinkhole activity, or it's in danger of collapsing into a sinkhole on your property.
Another type of holes that happen exclusively because of human activity is digging. When you're digging, what are some risks and dangers associated with that activity when it comes to, let's say, stick to our topic, our niche, the community association world? Ross, anything on this?
Yeah, definitely. So if your association's going through any digging, any man-made holes here, always call before you dig. You got to dial 811. It should be a common practice for you, just to make sure you're not going to be digging into any water or electrical or gas lines.
Yeah, it's definitely key. You want to make that call, find out where your lines are so you don't get yourself into trouble. I mean, if you can avoid it, that's really your best bet.
All right. So now that you're digging, what happens if you find that 55-gallon drum of unknown waste material buried on the property? What happened there? Is there any coverage for that type of discoveries?
Yeah, so believe it or not, David, it happens a lot more often than you think. I think we said it another time, but the land our communities are actually getting built on could have been used for anything prior to our use. So underground tanks could be under your community right now, but there's definitely insurance for that. And it's going to be one of those acronyms, and it covers a lot more than a 55-gallon drum when it comes down to it.
I think we spoke about this previously. It's called EIL, Environmental Impairment Liability. Many insurance companies have completely removed pollution coverage from their policies. So the EIL, or Environmental Impairment Liability, provides protection against the different kinds. I mean, bodily injury caused by pollution conditions, property damage, including damage to tangible property, or loss of use of that property.
True.
What about the other expenses?
Well, yeah, there could be remediation expenses, investigating to what extent and nature of the pollutant. That stuff gets expensive because you have to bring in experts and you have to bring in people that are going to test soils and things like this. Removing and disposing of the pollutant, whatever it might be. There's also could be defense costs in the investigation, adjustment, and the settlement defense of the claim.
Let's now move on to everyone's favorite element, wind. We get to fly our kite, and it's just awesome. Wind is awesome. What do you think, Ross? Steve?
Yeah, I mean, hey, when it comes down to it, there's more to it. Flip the coin, and tell us what's on the other side. It's all like a 50-50 shot when it comes down to it.
Right, that's right. I kind of forgot about the windstorms, tornadoes, the, wind-driven rain.
Yeah, the wind-driven rain, that's a common one out there. And, oftentimes, and you know this from your past life, associations might have an inadequate roof system to face these elements, especially rain. And each carrier looks at things different. They look at, where we're located, what we're made out of. But when it comes to wind, your insurance carrier might also provide a policy with a separate wind deductible than the normal deductible you're used to for your other property-driven claims. But that's why we have a wind buyback policy.
Wait a second. Wind buyback policy. What is that? Steve,
right,
go ahead.
I got it. All right. So wind buyback insurance, wind deductible buyback. It enables the policyholders with significant wind exposures to reduce the financial burden by lowering their deductibles.
Well, is that the only wind coverage that you can find out there?
Well, no, there's many carriers do provide coverage, while others insure you with like the crazy high deductibles. Wind buyback policy allows you to obtain coverage unique to wind-related events. There's actually, I think it's 18 coastal states plus Pennsylvania that all break out wind as a separate peril. Wind insurance, it has many names. I mean, you'll hear windstorm, you'll hear wind and hail, you'll hear named storm, and you might even hear something called hurricane coverage. Regardless of the name, wind insurance is an additional coverage added to an insurance policy to cover damage from hurricanes and storms, and hail even in some cases.
Based on where your property is really some things that you want to chat about with your broker.
Absolutely. It's all case by case. Absolutely.
Exactly. Now, we just talked about wind and the damage that it can cause, but that's not the only thing. So now my kite flew out of my hand because the wind was too strong and it's going to hit something. Kite's not going to damage so much, but what about other bigger debris? Ross, anything on this?
Yeah, so I was chatting with Nicole on our claims team, and one thing we see regularly is the debris coming from the dumpster area. Dumpster areas, the enclosures, they tend to be the culprit for this problem. We actually had a claim a few weeks back, where somebody threw out a mattress. It was right there next to the dumpster area, and it flew in some wind, and it damaged the car. So anything can happen when it comes down to it.
Yeah, well, when it comes to that, being proactive, making sure that we're taking steps is always better in the long run than having to put a claim in.
Definitely. As nice as Nicole is, you don't want to have to call and talk to Nicole. But it's so true, right? So here are some tips. It all starts with having a plan. You want to have a plan. Then you have to multiple steps. And I like to start first with an inspection. A property walkthrough, maybe just, quick manager inspection, and then take it a step farther. Have your landscaper join, have a maintenance company come. It's a great idea. They look from a different perspective and they might catch things. Outdoor preparation cleanup, whether it be seasonal or you're leaning into your broker and just getting a couple tips to shoot out to your residents in anticipation of a storm or any wind-driven rain. Remove any debris, have your roofs cleaned up, get rid of the gutters, tie down furniture, or put it away. The list goes on and on. You could have hundreds of steps for this plan, but let's start and just break it down with the basic three. So inspect, prepare, and remove.
All right, that's very good point. Easy to action upon. And one thing that I like with that proactive approach that you described is that we can reach out to our broker and ask for loss control articles that can help the association be more prepared, be more aware of what's at stake here. Anything you want to share from your manager's background with loss control article?
Yeah, so definitely. When I was a manager, some brokers send out loss control articles, others don't. Those that did It gave me tools to then send out mass emails or maybe include it in a newsletter along the way. So lean into your broker to provide you with the content to communicate. That's really what it comes down to.
Now, do we have coverage for like some of the outdoor amenities? And maybe we have the grill, the ping pong table. Oh, Steve, your favorite one, the shuffleboard.
Okay, so interesting enough. Really, anything that's movable could be considered business personal property, as opposed to real property, which is more or less permanent. So your grills, your chairs, I think you said ping pong, etc. That would fall into the category because these things can be moved around. But there's other games, amenities like bocce courts or tennis courts, and of course my personal favorite, the shuffleboard. Those are usually they're scheduled into the property and covered as such.
Hey, when those pucks end up flying everywhere, that's pretty risky. Now
you got to clean up when you're done.
Yeah.
As risky as that kite.
Yeah. Now let's move on to the next cause of loss. We're going to talk about fire. So fire is definitely a scary one. Now, Ross, do you know what is the peak season for house cooking fire, kitchen fires?
No, I'm not sure, David.
So it's actually Thanksgiving. On Thanksgiving time period, you have 49% of home fires, and that equates to about 21% of all fire fatality in the U.S.
That makes sense, man. Everybody's cooking that day, and I'm sure all those backyard turkey deep fries account for a good portion of that along the way. But 49%, that's crazy. That just says that our association should really be on extremely high alert. Our clubhouses have kitchens, all of our units have kitchens. Yep. Many of our associations have shared walls, garden-style communities. And fires can be one of the most devastating claims we deal with.
Your association's primary policy comes to play along with what the unit owner's insurance carriers cover as well.
All right, so that's where the coverage comes into play. Now, you mentioned the backyard turkey grilling. Let's talk about this, or deep frying. We can cook outside the kitchen. Is there anything to be worried about if I'm grilling on my deck or deep frying the turkey on my deck? Am I wooden?
From a coverage standpoint, that's probably not your best idea.
Really? Why?
Yeah. Well, if it's not your insurance carrier, it's going to say something. It might be the township. You might get in trouble there.
Yeah, so, many associations allow this, and then there's rules, right? So rules for the balconies, rules for the decks, rules for any other common spaces. I like to break things down in steps. So, step 1, call the township, find out what their rules are. Step 2, call your broker, confirm what your carrier's stance is on things. And then get those, grilling safety tips, more loss control articles from your broker at the same time. Because while you might be implementing new rules for your community, you want to make sure you're giving them as much information as possible.
Well, isn't there like a coverage for careless mistakes and accidents?
Definitely. Of course. Half the stuff we see out there is triggered by an accident when it comes down to it.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Now, when we talk about fires, it's nothing we can do. We have to talk about the chimney. How do carriers like chimneys when it comes to associations?
If I might on this one, chimneys themselves don't pose that much of a risk, but many fire-related claims are triggered due to the improper cleaning or lack of maintenance related to a chimney. So it's a good idea to work with your association's attorney and adopt a chimney and fireplace maintenance resolution to make sure that the unit owners are actually taking care of what needs to be taken care of. A manager can't go around and check everybody's chimney, and you never want to assume that they're doing it, and you really need to have a professional involved. And a resolution is a good way to make sure that you can enforce those rules, because it can be a potential risk.
Now, it's great you mentioned that you have a professional involved and request, the certificate that the chimney was maintained if it's being used.
Sure.
But did you know actually that the same organization in the US that certifies the technicians for chimney sweep is also certifying the guys that are working on dry-vent cleaning?
Okay.
Definitely. And it's good you could bundle it all together. It's like having a one-stop shop for, this category of claims that we're trying to prevent out there. And these companies can work with you and your association because it's typically a homeowner's expense. So If you have 300 units and they're going to come out and do 100 of them over like the course of a few days, that's great. They'll work with you.
The cleanings is something that you really want to keep forefront to the association's mind, because there's a lot of things that are not to the standard, the code nowadays that we see on association, like dryer vents venting into the attic or through the soffit of the roof. That's a problem because every single year 2,900 homes go up in flame due to dryer vent related fire. Think about your dryer vents as an exhaust system. You have the pipes coming out of the engine of the car, you have catalytic converter, you have different components along the way, you have the muffler. So all that comes into play, and it's the same thing for your dryer exhaust. You have to look at the whole system because it is something that raises the price of insurance. In recent years, you look at on average $35 million a year in property losses due to dryer vent fire. So that's a big deal. It's impacting the marketplace across the board.
Premiums they're on the rise. They're going up. But preventive maintenance, like you said, proper venting, again, not through the attic space. And unit owner education, like Ross was pointing out, all that goes a very, very long way.
Yeah, and to add to your point before, Steve, you mentioned the resolution. You can adopt a board resolution requiring owners to conduct these dryer vent cleanings and inspections for every 2 years or sooner, depending on what your local ordinance requires. You could also combine chimney and dryer vent resolutions onto one document. So if you're adopting both at the same time and this is new to you, lean into your association attorney and they should be able to help facilitate it.
Very cool. Thank you very much to the both of you to discuss the fire aspect. Now let's talk about water. Water, when we say that and it comes to claims, right away you're thinking flood. And in some cases you do need flood insurance because you are in a designated flood zone. But I've heard a couple times before that pretty much anywhere is a flood zone. It's just how often is it going to happen? So all 50 states today have some kind of sort of flooding. Actually, just last week, my town had their 100-year flood event. Flood coverage may be provided by your package policy or through a separate policy altogether. But Steve, can you define for us exactly what the carriers understand by flood?
All right, so definition.
In English.
English definition. All right, let's start with
English.
All right, sorry. Well, flood insurance covers the direct physical loss caused by a flood. In simple terms, English terms, a flood is an excess of water on land that is normally dry. So the official definition used by the NFIP, or National Flood Insurance Program, is a flood is a general and temporary condition of partial or complete inundation of 2 or more acres of normally dry land, or, this is important, or 2 or more adjacent properties, one of which being your property. Ross, is that good? You got an example maybe for us of
we wanted to speak in English, and when flood comes down to it, it's definitely not English, right? So it's a 3-hour web session in itself. But we have run into a few situations, right? Flood insurance is simply a mouthful. So an example, picture this, and maybe it doesn't relate to anybody, but you can definitely imagine something. You come home after a long day of work, pull into your driveway. There's a weird puddle on the side of your property. You walk up. It's in between your house and your neighbor's house. Okay. It's going up the side of your wall. You have damage on your property in addition to this water. And you're like, well, it's weird. I've never seen water there. You keep walking and you see that there's a pool being emptied onto this property. You see your neighbors emptying their pool onto your property.
So hold on. Is this actually would this actually be considered a flood scenario?
So when we're asking for scenarios, like what's black and white and what's gray, this one was indeed a flood.
So it's in the
temporary condition of a normally dry area. 2 properties were involved. One was your property. So even though you weren't in those so-called high-risk flood zones, flood coverage would have helped you in this situation.
Now, when we talk about water, and let's move on from the house with the backyard pool. Let's go to a high rise. Let's say you have a water heater that starts leaking on the 12th floor of a high rise building. What happens there with your policy? What gets triggered, Steve?
Well, you have coverage for that. You do.
Fantastic.
You do have coverage for that. Now, how your insurance program is structured is going to depend on how bad that's going to hurt. There could be deductibles involved there, and those deductibles can be arranged a number of different ways. So depending on how your deductibles are arranged, if you have a per unit deductible resolution or something similar, that's really going to affect what happens, especially something that's maybe up on like you said, the 12th floor. I've seen it happen, and it's going to take out units below it. So that's an important thing to talk about with your brokers, is how those deductibles are structured and how they can be changed and to benefit the association.
So the deductible seems like a low-hanging fruit, something that we can easily adjust. But is there any other practical, and I would like it to be a proactive step that the broker can initiate to work with the association and make it a better insurable risk? Ross, what do you think?
Definitely. So, we keep alluding to some resolutions that are out there. So there is a resolution which requires residents to provide you with proof of insurance coverage. Rather than us just trying to hunt them down and hoping they send it, this can actually be required of them. We can also do, in addition to that, an insurance deductible resolution, which places the deductible responsibility back onto the HO6 carrier. So like if we have a per unit deductible and a claim happens on the 12th floor, who knows how many units were affected? We could be out $10K on every one of those units. So how do we really make them whole again? Keeping the deductible in the insurance world and instead of, out of the association's funds. So requiring these resolutions, there's more. We could have replace water heaters after a specific number of years. Water heaters have, a life expectancy just like anything else, 8 to 12 years. So let's have a resolution that makes you replace them in 8 or 10. And without these rules, we just wait, right? Now water heaters burst, everything leaks, and we have problems. But if we require people to be proactive, it also makes you far more attractive in the insurance marketplace when getting your quotes.
Very true. And having these resolutions in place allow also the unit owner to start budgeting accordingly. Now, moving on to another example. Let's say, imagine yourself, we're on a garden-style condo this time. We're in Boston, winter's here, and the snowbird flew to Fort Lauderdale. Now, back at the ranch, the pipes are freezing and bursting.
Yeah, it's a common problem, and but it's really, really so very preventable.
What can we do?
Another resolution, adopt a resolution requiring owners to maintain temperatures, to avoid these pipe bursts, as well as possibly installing some burst-resistant hoses on other water-related appliances. Well,
yeah, along with the failed water heaters, the frozen pipe bursts and faulty hoses are top causes of insurance claims for water damage specifically. If you live in an association that has had repetitive water claims, you guys certainly know what I'm talking about. So it's a very good idea to stop these issues, like I was talking about earlier, to stop these issues before they present themselves. There's some very interesting products actually out there that are specifically designed to detect like a leak or something happening when nobody's around, like a sudden outflow of water, and will actually shut off and automatically shut off water to an affected unit.
Yeah, that's the key, Steve. The automatic shut-off valves, the sensors, there's a ton of stuff out there now.
Yep.
All right, so we appreciate your expertise to the both of you, your point of view on those causes of loss. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your insight, your point of view on those causes of loss: earth, wind, fire, and water. All right, well, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you another time for another installment of How It Works Power Webinar. See you soon.
See you guys.